trees, left down the land, withdrew their farms, hearts and district.
Hello, I'm Joyce Woodworth. Welcome to the Spirit of the Heartland. Today we're visiting the Wapasha Prairie Community Garden. This garden offers plots for its members to grow their own vegetables. Up to 50 plots are available for people living in the Winona area who do not have their own space for a garden. We're going to find out how this community garden began, how one can qualify for a space of their own here, and talk with some of the gardeners. And for an added bonus, we'll learn how to prepare a wonderful autumn dish prepared from some of the vegetables grown here on Wapasha's Prairie. The community garden is located just below Sugarloaf and in sight of beautiful Lake Winona on land donated by Winona Health. From a group initiative stemming from the Frozen River Film Festival and Theater du Mississippi, a grant was awarded by the University of Minnesota in the amount of $3,000 to begin the project. Through the hard work of many people, the land was prepared and cultivated to sustain garden plots for our community members. One of the garden plots, known as the Hunger Garden, is set aside and worked on by volunteers. All the produce that is harvested from this garden is donated to the food shelf. The gardeners using the other plots also contribute some of their extra vegetables to the food shelf. Well, I'm standing right in the center of Wapasha Prairie's community garden. It's a fabulous garden. There's plots all over the place. And I'm standing with Leah Carlson, who actually is the initiator of beginning this community garden. Tell me about it a little bit, Leah. How did you decide, or why did you decide to do it here?
Well, when I moved to Winona 9 years ago, I started asking around for where the community garden plots were, because I came here from St. Paul and we have a lot of community gardens. And there is still one communal garden, but nobody had plots that I knew of. So I rode my bicycle 12 miles out of town to have a garden, and I said, if I wasn't so committed, I wouldn't do that. So people who live in town needed a place to garden, so that was the bee in my bonnet. The plots are fairly small. There's half plots that are 8 by 16, and there's full plots that are 16 by 16. So it's not meant to be like a farm or anything. It's just to be able to provide for a family, and it's on the east side of Winona where a lot of the houses are really close together. So it was intended to be handy and available for people who might not have a spot to garden.
Okay. Well, tell me what kind of a response you got then from the people who wanted plots here.
Tremendous would be a word. We kind of worked on getting it ready for a little over a year to put some policies in place and to secure the land and all the infrastructure and so forth. And by the time we opened up registration on March 1st, people beat the door down and it was closed by 10 days later.
Oh, that's wonderful. And now I know you're going to be extending for the season of 2010.
Mm-hmm. We are. The demand has been so great, and we'd like to serve as many people as possible, but you've got to keep it a manageable size too. And since this was our first year, we didn't dare go any bigger. But next year we're going to add to the south, at least half again as much as there is now, and see how that goes.
Excellent. Well, tell me, what do you have to do to qualify to get a plot here?
You don't really have to qualify. In fact, you don't even have to have experience as a gardener, because one of the programs we set in place was a mentoring project. We do have a lot of experienced gardeners who just needed some space, to do their gardens. And then we have people who wanted to learn how, and we hooked them up in a mentoring relationship so they could work together and be a success. And my only regret is that we can't be, absolutely huge, because we couldn't manage it, because we'd love to have anyone in the city of Winona who wants garden space to have it, but that's not realistic. Mm-hmm. This year we did it as a first come, first serve. Depending on what the demand is next year, of course, those who have a plot will have first dibs on returning to their very plot. Mm-hmm. But once we open up, we might have to have a lottery, because there may not be enough to go around. And we'd like to encourage other groups to start other gardens.
Well, that's good news. Mm-hmm. Well, tell me about some of the rules that you might have for people wants to maintain their gardens?
Well, a couple of things we put in place. One is that people put in a cleanup deposit at the beginning of the year, and at the end of the year they need to clean all the weeds and all their plants out, and they will get their deposit back. The other thing we've asked for is 12 hours of community work. So the whole community put up the fence and built the compost and put in the gate and put the water system in and so forth. So everyone, contributes to making sure the garden happens. I think the other things, are about weeds in particular, is not letting them go to seed, so we don't have weeds seeding themselves into other people's gardens. And I really am passionate about people growing their food. And I just think it's such a wonderful experience that's what I'm trying to share now.
Okay, great. And I see you've picked a beautiful basket of your vegetables, and I'm hoping that maybe you'll show us a dish to prepare with those vegetables.
Yes, I would be absolutely happy to.
Okay, well, I promise when we're finished talking with the other people in the garden, we will go to my house and we will cook up some vegetables.
Sounds great.
Hi, Carly. You have a beautiful little plot here. You've got big, full, rich tomatoes. And well, tell me why you decided to have a plot here in the garden.
I actually live in an apartment complex in town at Gulfview Crossings, and the couple of plants that I've tried to grow inside the last 7 or 8 years that I've lived there haven't really gotten this nice. And during the Earth Day Festival at Winona State, I saw the booth for this community garden, but there was a waiting list. And then a couple weeks later, I got an email saying, you know what, somebody can't take care of their plot. Can you come in? Would you like the plot? I said, yes. The next day, I think I had everything all tilled up and half the plants already planted the very next day because I was so excited. I had to do a dirt angel, lay in the dirt like a snow angel, flop around. It was very nice.
Well, so you are actually the perfect candidate for this garden, aren't you? Yeah, because you live in a small apartment.
Yep.
You have no land behind you or anything.
No. Not even a balcony I can grow anything on of. If I had a balcony, I'd do that. But
were you a gardener before?
My parents were, but this is my first time gardening.
So how are you feeling about it?
I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
It's very fun.
Okay.
I'm out here just about every day.
Oh, really? You really love it.
I really like being out here.
You never probably knew you were a true gardener.
No, I never knew that. My mom joked and said I'd always have a green thumb, and I always said no way.
Well, let's talk about your garden. What do you have planted?
I have Roma tomatoes, and I've got about 4 different variety of tomatoes. I think those are big boy tomatoes. There's 4th of July right behind you, and these are sun golds. I have squash, which isn't doing great. Zucchini, which is doing really great. I make a wonderful zucchini chocolate bread. That's lovely. Eggplant, I've been getting lots and lots of eggplants. It's coming out of my ears. I've got so many. Peppers, I've got peppers and herbs. Chocolate mint is right down over here. That's lovely stuff in tea.
What do you do with it?
It's tea. I usually dry it and put it in my tea. It's very nice. Or just eat it. It smells really good and tastes good too. Little hint of chocolate in your mint.
Well, what are you finding now that this is your first experience with gardening? What are you finding that you like to grow the most?
I think the tomatoes are nice. They're very productive this year. I've got about 8 or 9 quarts of tomato sauce in my freezer that I've frozen already this year.
Let's talk about how you feel about working with other people side by side.
This place is a godsend to me. I know nothing about gardening. And I'm too kind of like, oh, Mom, can you tell me how to do this? And I don't want to ask her for that kind of stuff. I want to try to do it on my own. But there's always somebody down here. If I ever have a question about what kind of bug is this, or if there's a pest or something on my plants, they can always answer. Somebody here knows about it. Wow. It's lovely. And Jan always emails us if we have a new pest of the week that's coming out. Like we had cucumber beetles in the beginning of summer, and she said this is what they look like, and this is what they offer, what we can do about the pest, and which I'd have no idea. I've never gardened before.
Helping each other out, and you're socializing.
It really is a community garden. Everybody down here is so friendly. So friendly. You can just strike up a conversation with anybody down here because you all have something in common, is gardening.
Well, we've come across Bruno here who's working in his garden. And Bruno, you'll have to tell us your last name. I didn't quite understand it.
My last name is Borsari.
Okay. And you, I understand, are from Italy.
I'm originally from Italy, yes, from Cesena, Italy, in Emilia-Romagna.
And here I find you right in the middle of a garden underneath sugarloaf. This is so wonderful.
Well, I have been a Winonan already for 4 years.
Yes.
I teach biology at Winona State, and I have been a strong supporter of this initiative because gardening it's a great hobby, and especially now with all this need for food and food security can be also a great vehicle to educate people, perhaps to become a little bit more self-sufficient.
Yes, I agree. Well, let's talk about your garden plot. I understand you have a half a plot, and tell me what you have in it and what you like to grow.
Yes, this is half a plot, so it's just 16 feet by 8, and as I was telling you, I decided to lease it mainly to provide my 2 young boys. I have 2 teenagers, maybe a meaningful activity to do during the summertime. So we came together here in May, we planted a few seedlings, and then I was hoping that they would have come more regularly. It ended up that I did most of the work at the end, but it's okay. I tried to give the tuning cord. Hopefully next year they will be more interested.
That's funny how that happens, isn't it? I know I went through that with my boys too. Well, you have some special tips about growing a garden. Let's talk about that. You mentioned the advantage of growing clover in your garden.
Yes, the clover is a nitrogen-fixing plant. And so in a system like this garden where we don't want to use products of synthesis like fertilizers or any other chemical product, the combination of a nitrogen-fixing plant like clover with, for example, a leafy plant like beets, chards, tomatoes, any other vegetables is beneficial to the economic crop because the bacteria growing in the roots of the clover will fix nitrogen from the atmosphere, and the plant, the agronomic plants growing nearby, benefits as if they were fertilized. Well, tomatoes in my culture are the base for any kind of sauce that you can cook for pasta. And so the summertime to me is the best time of the year because I can make the best quality sauce with fresh tomatoes and no flavor that you can beat by picking a tomato from the vine and cooking it on the same day. Is also the lettuce here that you see in the back that is now going to seed. So although the leaf may not be as tender and good to eat as much as it was maybe a month or 2 months ago, I decided to let the plants complete their cycle. So hopefully they will produce seed that I will collect later on in the fall and maybe save it for next year or exchange it with other growers here. Gardeners also love to exchange seed of their plants, especially if they are doing well, if they grow well.
And did you have gardens back in Italy? Have you always been a gardener?
I have been raised in town, so I'm a city kid, so to speak. But in Italy, everybody, like I think everybody in the world, we have roots in the countryside. Maybe we forgot about those roots. So I've always been interested in growing some food wherever I lived. And so I'm really pleased that now I live in a community that is supporting this great activity. And I'm really thankful to Leah and the other board members of the community garden that spearheaded this movement.
And you were telling me before, one of your favorite things about gardening is sharing your produce with your friends.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There is no better joy, I think, for a gardener than fixing a meal and sharing that meal of locally grown food with friends and family in a big table.
And you obviously love what you're doing right here.
Yes, I think it's a very enjoyable, inexpensive, and productive hobby, I would think.
And a beautiful place to do it.
And also a great opportunity to meet other people who live in town and who share similar interests.
Bruno, thank you so much for talking with us. Enjoy your garden.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Ciao.
Ciao.
This is Stuart Shaw, who has a beautiful little plot here. I've been watching you garden. You just are like a little busy beaver here. You are really working hard here. Is this enjoyable for you?
Oh yes, I enjoy the hobby. Ever since my dad gave me a little plot when I was probably 5 or 6 years old, I've enjoyed gardening. Haven't been able to garden every year because I've lived in cities where it's not possible, but yes, it's a lifelong hobby.
Great. So what was it like for you when you heard that there's actually going to be a community garden here that you can use?
I didn't wait to find out more about it, and I was one of the first to sign up for a plot.
What do you all have planted in here?
Well, we start out with beets and then rhubarb Swiss chard and carrots, a little row of lettuce, behind here onions, and then some herbs, and that's a little celery. That's not commonly grown in gardens in Minnesota, but someone gave me the plant, so I gave them a home. And
I see you have a little bit more protection around that.
yes, you want to shade them so that the stalks are white like you buy in the grocery store. Otherwise, they will turn out to be dark colored. And
Well, let's talk about what you like to do with all your produce, because you obviously have an abundance.
well, I do, and I take it home, most of it, or give it away to people who can use it. I've taken some of the rhubarb chard down to the food shelf at Winona Volunteer Services.
And Stuart, you can't help but just notice where this garden is. I mean, this is one of the most beautiful, peaceful spots here in Winona. What's it like working under Sugarloaf and near the lake?
Oh, it's enjoyable. We live on Bluffside down on Goodview Road and don't have much level ground down there. So it's very nice having ground that's already level. It doesn't have to be terraced in such a beautiful setting as this.
How much time do you actually put into this garden?
Well, a little hard to estimate. I suppose on average maybe 3 hours a week, something like that.
Well, that's not bad at all. It's a great hobby, isn't it?
It is a wonderful hobby. Yeah.
Okay. So would you recommend to other people to try and get a plot here at the community garden?
Definitely. It's a wonderful hobby, and it's a great activity for family. My son has a plot right next there, and he brings his 4 children out here. They help him harvest and cultivate and water and enjoy it quite a bit.
So it brings family together as well as socializing with the other gardeners.
It certainly has that potential.
Okay, thank you, Stuart, for talking with us.
you're
Good
welcome.
luck. Good luck with your celery.
Well, we'll give it a try.
Now you have a sort of a different organized garden, and you have, looks like a full plot. Tell me about the method here.
Well, it's probably based on permaculture concepts, but it's not really full permaculture. What I did was I figured out the most garden space I could have with 18-inch paths and still be able to reach all parts of the garden. So in permaculture, this would be called a keyhole, a keyhole structure. And so then I just gridded it out and figured out how much it would be. Then things are planted pretty tightly and then mulched heavily. So there have been virtually no weeds. The weeds aren't an issue at all because it's thick mulch. It keeps the moisture in the soil, and then the leaves of the plants themselves reach out and touch each other, so the soil is shaded and it stays cooler. Kale is like one of the most important things that I grow, and I usually grow at least 2 varieties because you never know which one's going to work and which one's not. This is Scotch kale, and this is Russian kale over here. And our goal is to have enough kale frozen to have it at least once a week year-round.
Well, since you said kale, give us a little tip for cooking kale.
Well, I guess it is a southern way of doing it, but I like to fry just a few little pieces of bacon up and then chop like half an onion and saute that in the bacon oil, and then put the kale in, still moist from having washed it. Put a lid on it, and it'll kind of simmer down until it's tender. It takes 15 or 20 minutes, and I like it just like that, but my kids put balsamic vinegar on it. This is the first time I've done a community garden, which I think it's such a phenomenal thing because not only are we growing food here, good organic, nutritious food, we're growing community. And that's such an important part of what's going on here.
We left the gardeners tending their vegetables, learning from one another how to get the most from their small plot of land, and enjoying their time thoroughly at the Wapasha Prairie Community Garden, to head to my kitchen, where Leah Carlson brought her basket of freshly picked vegetables to share her recipe for a delicious garden harvest dish. Well, I brought Leah back here to my kitchen, and I discovered not only is Leah a professional gardener, but she's also sort of a professional cook, because she has led different trail rides with cooking for the people that are on the trail rides, I understand.
I go to the Boundary Waters every year with a friend, and I am always completely responsible for the cooking, and I try to cook fresh the whole trip. So my reputation led me to get hooked up with a little research team that was in the Everglades last winter for 3 weeks, and I cooked fresh for them the entire trip.
Well, then that sort of led you into writing your own cookbook, I understand.
Right, exactly. So I've just started, my working title is The Wilderness Gourmet, Eating Fresh on the Trail. And I've got outline and so forth, looking for a publisher.
And now you're going to share one of your special recipes with us, I understand.
Mm-hmm. Today I'm going to be making tarragon potato salad. You can see in the basket there are a variety of colors of potatoes. I like to grow a lot of heirloom ones. There's red, there's purple, there's some fingerlings, some whites. When I harvest them, the ones that look like they're going to be big and store for a long time, I just put into storage. And the ones that are smaller or bruised or this or that, I like to make into a nice fall potato salad. What's fun about this particular one is it also uses up little things you might have left over in the garden, like little sprouts off the sides in your broccoli. It has a carrot in it, some handful of beans, where it's just not enough to make a meal, and you can add them to the potato salad, and it's really, really pretty. Well, the first step is to cut up your potatoes, wash them. I don't always peel them unless there's a bruise or some green areas, and cut them into bite-sized pieces and start to steam them. Now, I prefer a bamboo steamer because it's really easy to handle, and they're typically wide so you can get a nice even cook. But if this is the kind of steamer you have, it works perfectly fine. So either way is just fine. So that's the first step, is to get them steaming. And the reason I steam them instead of boil them is to keep the nutrients in the potatoes, and also just the texture of them is better for soaking up the marinade.
Okay. Well, let's take a peek and see how they look.
Okay.
Oh,
looks
wow.
like they're getting done.
Well, they are so colorful.
Mm-hmm. So we've got this mix of vegetables, a smaller amount than the potatoes, and the potatoes are partially done, maybe about 10 minutes, 15 minutes into cooking. I'm going to just add these on top. I put them in the steamer so you could see the different styles of steamer. I'm going to just spread them out a little bit. And yes, I use my hands when I'm cooking. So now we're going to just finish steaming that.
Okay. Now, how much longer will that steam?
Oh, we want maybe about 5 more minutes on that.
Okay.
While it's steaming, we're going to make the marinade.
Okay. I've got a nice big bowl for you. That ought to be big enough, because
Yep.
I understand you need a big bowl for this.
We're going to
correct?
be stirring it all up together while the potatoes and the vegetables are still hot. And so we need a lot of room to work in.
Okay.
So the first thing we're going to do, I have already cut up a lot of the herbs, and they're in here. So we've got some fresh dill weed, and that's going to go in. And we've already cut up some chives, so those are going to go in as well. And our wonderful tarragon. And the last thing is fresh basil. And fresh is the only way to go on the basil. Don't substitute dried. So skip it and use parsley if you don't have basil. We're going to put garlic in as well. And I'm going to take a pinch of salt, and this is real salt, which has the minerals in it, which is why it's got the specks. Kind of a specialty. You can see it's a little bit pinkish in color, but it has all the minerals in it, and I really like to make stuff flavorful and healthy, so wherever I can, I add the extra nutrition. All right, so that's our blend, and what we're going to do is take our extra virgin olive oil and cover the herbs. And as soon as our potatoes are ready then, all the vegetables, we're going to turn it into this and stir it up. And while it cools, it will soak in all those flavors.
Okay, this sounds like a delicious recipe. We have one other ingredient. When do we put this in?
That is going to go in at the very last, right before it's served. And this is my secret ingredient for almost everything I cook, umeboshi plum vinegar. And you can get it at our local Bluff Country Co-op. It is unlike no other vinegar because it starts with a fruit, so it's sweet, it's salty, it's just really, really flavorful.
Well, yeah, I think they're ready.
I think so. It's been about 20 minutes, so the potatoes were in 15 and then 5 for the last.
No, isn't this going to be really hot?
It's actually not, and that's one reason I love the bamboo steamer, is because you can actually handle it, and it's warm, but it's not hot. It's a nice tight fit in this pan, which is good.
Perfect.
Okay, and then while they're still very hot, they go right into the marinade so that the starchiness of the potatoes will actually take up all those great flavors. We're going to try and stir things around so that the flavors get all mixed together. There we go.
Leah, that looks just beautiful. Oh my goodness, that looks beautiful. Voila, huh?
So should we add the final
Yeah.
little ingredient? You can eat it warm or you can refrigerate it and add this at the last minute and eat it cold.
Okay,
So-
well, I'm going for eating it warm. I think we should have a little sample, right?
I think
now.
so.
What do you think?
Sure, I think so.
Okay. Well, let's try it.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you think the potatoes are different flavors?
Very slightly. You know, it's more textural often that they are.
Wonderful flavor. Well, Leah, thank you so much for making this delicious potato salad for us.
You're welcome.
And thank you also for joining us at the garden at the Wapasha Prairie Community Garden.
You're welcome for that too.
And thank you for joining us here today. Please join me again next week. Till then, enjoy the spirit of the Heartland.